Storytelling, like, wow. I mean, everyone says it's the most important thing, which it so is, you know. It's the most important thing. There's other things I love, you know, I love performance, I love animation in itself, I love filmmaking, but storytelling is at the heart of what we do. You know, I always say, like, because people say, oh, you're an animator. I say, well, animation is like number 3 on the list. That good storytelling is number 1, good filmmaking is number 2, and good animation is like number 3. So storytelling is everything, and it's a difficult brute as well. I find, you know, I mean, we do a lot of storytelling because if you're just making a 1-minute film, we do have this character called Morph. If I'm making a film about Morph that's a minute long, that's storytelling. That has a shape, you know, a shape that you can feel and it needs to have. But that's easy. A 1-minute film is easy. An 85-minute film is extraordinarily difficult, I have to say. We spend so long wrangling with stories. And I know it's not just us, because I've worked at DreamWorks, I've worked at Sony, you know, I've seen it there, I've heard it anecdotally from Blue Sky, from Pixar. Everyone has the same, not trouble, challenge, the same challenge. Because storytelling is everywhere in the process, right? Yes, in a sense, you know, in a sense, storytelling is in production design, yeah, and in character design. That's part of it, not, you know, absolutely, that's integral to it. Also, it's in editorial, absolutely, and in mixing sound effects at the end. So, you know, in a sense, you keep working on the story all the way through, because every little choice you make, music is huge, you know, that huge thing that comes in quite late in the process and affects your storytelling, changes it. Yeah, you make so many versions of the story, and the big one, the one you're animating, that story is a huge adventure. It's like climbing Mount Everest. Or no, it's not. No, that's too easy because you can see the top. It's like working your way through some incredible impenetrable jungle, you know. Of course you have an idea in mind. Of course you do. But it changes continually. I can't tell you how much it changes. It's extraordinary how much it changes. I mean, for example, very, very late in the day, ideas will come in, radical ideas will come in really late in the day. I'll tell you an example. It's a fairly easy one, and we don't sound too bad when I tell it to you. That I worked on Flushed Away, and Flushed Away, the shape of the plotting, the narrative, was always pretty clear. You know, the guy, rich, pampered guy, rat in this case, flushed down the sewer, ends up in the sewer, you know, struggles to get home through great ordeals, and discovers when he gets home that in fact he's actually missing real life, because real life was down there in the sewer, and eventually he goes back. That kind of pattern of story. But why it was his story kept changing it, and it's extraordinary how you can keep the structure in place and change quite a small thread, and that small thread kind of affects everything. So like his motives, what was he like? To start with, in this case, in Flushed Away, to start with, the guy was an arrogant prick that like you know, entitled. And by the end, after numerous slow evolutions, he became a lonely guy. And that was the thing that was wrong with his life to start with. And that we didn't see that or to discover that until, you know, more than 3/4 of the way through the making of it, I should think. So it amazes and fascinates me that fascinates me, that you can keep discovering your own story and changing your own story. Personally, I'm not a musical person. I'm not musically literate, you know, at all. I don't play anything, so I don't know much about it. So because of that, personally, I don't think about it. In fact, you know, don't tell anyone. But when I'm watching a film, I very seldom notice the music. Some people are highly tuned to it, you know, very highly tuned to the music as much as to the performances, and I'm not. I just am not. I'd like to be, but I'm not. So, for me, the relationship with the composer is incredibly important because I'm putting a huge amount of faith in them. And it's true to say that I think I make films without considering the music very much. I'm not proud of this, but it's just a fact of life. I don't consider it much. Now, of course, you know that when you're making an animated feature, you always have temporary music in place, and that is a very difficult thing because you've got your story reel that you are looking at and working on and adjusting. That story reel wouldn't stand up without music, so you have to lift music from somewhere you like. And there, I might say, oh, I loved such and such a film. You know, I loved that theme, or I loved that style. Let's take that composer's work. But even so, you're stealing an existing theme from somewhere else and using it to give your real weight, you know, emotions, of course, drama. And then, of course, you become attached to that music, which is fatal because it's not going to be that music, you know. And no composer is going to start copying somebody else. They shouldn't do, even themselves. And so you get, for me, my experience is that quite late on, you get to this stage where you take a massive leap into a new universe, the universe of music. I would say that, personally, for preference, because I'm not secure about it, I like the music to come in as early as it can into the process, so that I can discuss it, you know, and influence it as far as I can, lacking the right language, so I can influence it, and also, frankly, get used to it, because otherwise it can be quite a shock. I mean, you cannot overestimate the power of it. It's extraordinary. I mean, the way it strikes me is we've got a studio full of people, you know, 300 people, working away for 4 years to achieve something, and then a guy comes along with an orchestra, and with a relatively small amount of time, you know, has this incredible impact. You know, they can transform your film. I have to say I love it. You know, having said that I don't know much about it, and having said I can't speak the language, which is true, I still love it because it is so powerful. And when you hear a theme that becomes your theme, you know, in the Pirates movie, for example, that was quite clear to me because the Pirate movie was definitely a comedy. I mean, that was strong in my mind that it should be a comedic film, and so therefore one was allowed perhaps a little bit of pastiche, and so I wanted, of course, the big pirate theme, the one you expect, the in any pirate movie, as the ship crashes through the sea and the billows spray across the bows, you know, the stirring pirate theme plays, and so Teddy Shapiro, you know, wrote a wonderful one, which I totally love. So I guess the truth is that character and story are completely entwined, is the obvious thing, but it's really hard to tell who comes first or who's more important, which is more important. I'm very aware of this now because just now Nick is making a film. Nick Park is making a film back home in Bristol. He's at quite a delicate stage. He hasn't yet got any real actors' voices in. So at the moment it's all temp voices, and this is only one part of the problem. But a real actor brings, you know, so much in terms of injecting life into these characters. Until the real actor comes along, you tend to have kind of, you know, the characters are sort of in a coma. They're only partly alive, you know, and so it's difficult to know who they are. And because it's difficult to know who they are, it's difficult to know what the story is. It's really profound. That the link is so profound. You know, when character is demonstrated by what characters do. That's so it's what they do, and what they say defines them. And until they have started both talking and doing, it feels you're just waiting for this to come together and really make sense. Of course, stories first, because of course it is. You've got to write the story to find the dialogue for the characters to say. And again, as I was saying before, you can take a narrative which doesn't change very much, and then you can alter this character at the front of the narrative, and everything else within it sort of resets. And the odd thing is that it's so slow to get to a finished character. I mean, if you're working with live action with actors, I assume that you could get an actor in and get them in costume and do a rehearsal, and you'd sort of have the character there before you in one go. Because animation doesn't work that way, you have to go through this process of scripting, yes, but also of designing, and then in our case building. Well, in all cases building the puppet, and then finally animating, and finally getting the right dialogue. So it's a very, very stretched out process before you get to that thing you're looking for. Who is my character? I mean, when I made the Pirates film, I guess it's true to say I think I knew the pirate captain pretty well from pretty early on. Yeah, I did. I think I did. But it still needed Hugh Grant to come along to sort of fill him out, and make him, filled out, three-dimensional. So you're directing an actor, and I think anyone will acknowledge, anyone sensible, that will acknowledge that you're going to the actor to bring stuff in. Absolutely, of course you are. So I think my experience is that you give direction, personally, quite lightly to start with, so that the actor can make it his or her own. I think that's really important, because because that's good, because you should let actors contribute, because they're the experts, in terms of performance, they're the experts. But you have the overview, you know the whole film. So making sure the actors are fully briefed, understand the whole picture that's in my head, that's perhaps the most important thing. But then when they do that, then they could and should take it on themselves, and I think some actors, I think some directors are control freaks, and it freaks them out when the actor won't do exactly what's in the director's head. I think that's kind of ridiculous, because I don't believe you're getting the best out of the actor that way. So it's a partnership, and you have to trust them a lot, but you also have to know what you want. If you're really not getting what you want, then there's interesting negotiation there to try and to make the actor see it and believe in it your way. I always think that animation is a very key thing. It sounds obvious, I know, but early on we do animation tests, and they're very primitive. They look terrible. When you look back at them in hindsight, you can't believe you did them. But they are very interesting in terms of working out, of seeing characters sort of forming before your eyes. And probably you haven't even got a line from the film. You're probably doing it before that, but you've chosen the cast. So you get the same actor or actress saying a line, and then you animate to match it. And in that, a hell of a lot of character starts to emerge. It's when they suddenly sort of pop into 3 dimensions, literally in 3 dimensions. So that's a very exciting thing, and that certainly was the case with the pirate captain. The first animation tests just bring him to life. I guess that's terribly obvious. I suppose all I'm saying is that there are very few clear boundaries in the process, but from start to finish, from from writing the words on paper, recording them, temp recordings, the final recordings, building the puppet, animating the puppet, and in the middle of that, directing the actor somewhere. All of those things, they are all part of the whole, and from that emerges a character which, with a decent following wind, is bigger and better than you could have imagined. We absolutely can't do anything useful until we've got the actor. Before then, we do mechanical tests to see if the character can move properly. You might possibly do something like a walk test to find that, but the finished character and everything that's done on everything that appears on the screen always strictly follows the recording. Yeah, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of. I love working with voices, with actors' voices, and I will confess that I like it when there's air in there. Like, it's interesting. In America, there's a great culture of the super fast talking, sort of wisecracking thing, which is hugely attractive. I mean, it's lovely to listen to, but it's not so interesting to animate to. Like, if you're talking really, really fast, because you tend not to get all the nuances, and the interesting acting moments normally come when the character has actually stopped talking. I find that's or paused at any rate. So that's and I like people. I like hesitation and repetition and stuttering and stuff like that, which is why I loved David Tennant as Charles Darwin, because he played this as a anxious, hesitant, stuttering sort of fellow, and that gave us so much room to make him interesting and funny. Acting, working with actors for animation is a strange thing indeed. A strange thing indeed. I confess that almost always we end up recording the actors separately, and I don't think that's a good idea, but that's how it goes. I think it's oddly enough, it's largely a question of finance. It's because you pay a certain amount of money to get an actor into a room, certain amount of money. So you don't really want them sitting there listening to other actors the whole time. Again, just to refer to what's in the front of my mind, the Pirates film, the pirate captain Hugh Grant was in every scene and talking quite a lot. He's quite a voluble character. So we tend to get them separately, which is difficult. And the process of recording them separately and then putting a conversation together from people who never met, I think we do it really well. I can't tell that these people never met, and eventually you get the chemistry, you get the dynamism, but it's a slow and painful process, and I don't think it's great for the actors. For most actors, actors are used to working together. They're used to sparking off each other, and that is so obvious. On the Pirates film, I had 5 or 6 sessions with 2 actors in, and most of the others, the actors were all on their own. Again, you get a small walk-on part like Brendan Gleeson, really funny man, but actually, when you analyse his role, he just chips in 2 lines in every scene, and so he's not actually conversing, really. He's just contributing, so it makes sense to record him on his own. Hugh Grant, as an actor, interestingly, preferred working alone. I think most don't, but he did. He was much happier with just. And when I say alone, he's not alone, of course. There's me, and there's the sound recordist, and there's always a read-in artist, and the read-in artist is terribly important. And by the end of the pirate film, the reading artist knew the film better than anybody because he'd done everything else in the film. He knew every line and every nuance. And by the end, he knew how the lead actor had delivered that line, and he could copy it very faithfully. So that's a very valuable part of the thing. So gesture is massively important. from numerous points of view. Both, you know, the positive is the right gesture just brings you into the scene, punctuates the scene, seems to catch the moment, which I think is the thing that we're always talking about. But gesture just used carelessly can be highly distracting. And I've seen lots of films where I think there's just way too much going on for my taste. You know, people gesturing frantically to hit every sort of punctuation point of a speech, and that's exhausting and pointless. But I think the right one is great, and I often think about recognition is a great thing. Like when the audience sees something and they think, "Oh God, I know how that feels," or "That's just what people do." You know, wow, that, you know. Then they feel that's just what I do. They feel that recognition very importantly. So we often record on video ourselves and members of the crew acting out the scene. We do record the actors, but they are seldom. They're seldom truly in character, in the sense that they're standing at a microphone. They're not moving. And some of them, David Tennant was brilliant at putting a lot of life into his performance, and a lot of gestures which we did actually copy. The things he did at the microphone we copied, but mostly you don't get that. So we as a team, the animators end up doing who will do the final performance, often record themselves on video, and I would often do the pirate captain. I think it was a shameless self-portrait, and I was happy. That was good. But then it didn't make sense for me to do other characters because, of course, I wanted them differentiated. So what we did in practice was we chose animators who'd proved themselves. Okay, you're Charles Darwin, you're Queen Victoria, you're the pirate with the scarf, and they got to lead that role. So that, and really, what that means is they're mostly using their own gestures. Really, I would, if there was something important I wanted, I would direct them, of course. But basically, they were using their own gestures, which is what animators naturally do. Animators naturally, given half a chance, do self-portraits. I notice. That's very natural. If you are, if you're really rigorous, you don't want self-portraits. You want it all to look like one performance. So by me always doing the pirate captain, then I was setting down the language of gesture, which was the pirate captain's language of gesture, for all the animators, and ditto with the other characters. At Aardman, we don't really have a costume department. I know they do at Leica. They do have that, and we don't. So what that means is the character designer has effectively done most of the work. You know, probably by at least broad strokes. They've dictated the costume. So I would work very closely with the character designer to get to fill in the detail, because, you know, as you suggested, there's a lot of narrative in the costume. You know, there's history, isn't there? There's, you know, and there's character. There's character. You know, people wear their clothes like they wear their bodies differently, and the way bodies are very expressive, so clothes are very expressive. I think Aardman, it is not the most important thing. If you look at Wallace and Gromit, costumes are pretty simple, actually. The reason is very simple, actually, because originally Wallace and Gromit were both made of modelling clay, plasticine, as we'd say in English, and with modelling clay, you can't do any patterns. You know, you can't have a checked shirt or anything like that, because as soon as you touch it, it all smears horribly. So the aesthetic of Wallace and Gromit was modelling clay, because you don't want to build costumes in modelling clay that have lots of pattern on them and stuff like that, because the pattern smears when you touch it. So Wallace himself, just to talk about Wallace, he's got a green, what we call a tank top. Do you call those tank tops? A pullover with no sleeves. Green tank top, red tie, white shirt, brown trousers, grey boots. The colours that came from the packet of plasticine, that's what they are, except for the tank top, which is a hard thing, made of resin, which never moves, and Gromit is two colours of clay. So because they were already existed, they affected the way we designed the rest of the characters, and most of the characters are fairly simple, and their costumes sort of halfway between a sort of realism and clay. But they're not made of clay anymore. They're made of foam latex and painted. Although now I'm thinking that Lady Tottington, who was a kind of preposterous, love interest, and she did have gowns. She had gowns which were made for her. Famously, one where she looked like sweet corn, and one where she looked like a carrot. And they were actually designed by a costume designer for the joke. Actually, I think. So our history was of quite simple sculptural shapes, and we've seldom had to worry about swirling fabrics. We just haven't gone there, The pirate captain had a long tail coat, and that was a discussion. It was like he thought, oh, okay, if we make the coat down to hit the back of his shins, then it's going to, whenever he walks, it's going to flap around like crazy, and therefore that will add a certain number of weeks to the shoot, probably, to have his flapping tailcoat. But so the alternative was to have a much shorter cut coat that came just down to his bum. But we thought that was not sufficiently swashbuckling, so we had to go for the long coat and take the hit. That it would take us longer to animate. We had fun with the pirates simply because my assumption was, my underlying assumption going into the whole thing was that pirates wear extravagant costumes. That's, they have sashes and buckles and gold braid and stuff like that. That's just what pirates do. So we had to do that and had fun with it. The interesting thing about puppet animation, which is very familiar to me, is that we get to cheat like prodigiously with our world. It's a nice thing about puppet animation, that you can change proportions from shot to shot if you want to, if you need to. I mean, very simple example. On the pirate ship, when you're standing on the deck of the ship, from a distance, you would think that ship was, in human terms, 20 feet long, not very long. But then when they stand at one end, you can see it runs away from 30 feet that way. And when you look back the other way, oh, it runs 30 feet that way as well. So there's very little correlation between the interior of the boat and the long shot exterior of the boat. That's just a small example, but of the ways that you can cheat. So you can make a door bigger or smaller for one shot, depending on the effect you want to create. So we find that the puppets don't change, and the world changes around them. I don't know if it's the same in CG now. It's probably better than it was. But back in the days of Flushed Away, I was always amused how they didn't like to cheat. The CG people, it offended them. Because I'd say, oh, we've got a box this big. Okay, well next. Can't you just make it bigger? Oh, we can't do that. That's broken the set. We can't do that. But we can. We slide our walls up and down shamelessly the whole time. One thing I would like to do that we haven't done, I'd be very interested to do like song and dance, like a musical. That would be fun to do. I'd like, there hasn't been enough of that in animation for quite a long time. I'd like to do it in puppetry. That would be great. With the pirates, I was very happy with mixing CG and stop motion, and certainly set extensions, particularly set extensions, because a bit of spectacle is fun, and the number of the projects that we've got on need spectacle, need space, and I like that. I'm not interested in the. I don't mean that that's the point of the movie. Whoa, wow, what big scenes! That's not the point of the movie. But to make the point of a big journey. Yeah, no, I was saying like in the Lego movie, you sort of could have made it stop motion, but I love the scale that they put into it. It was very satisfying, and it wasn't designed just for you to go wow. It was designed to make you laugh mostly, which I think was a very good idea. I have a desire to bring to the world honest, funny English entertainment. That's what interests me. And the first word is a kind of big word, is honest. And it's a big old word there. And I mean that the choices you make are from the heart. That's what I actually mean. I don't know how else to put it. They're not cynical. You can make cynical choices to make a lot of money. I think a lot of people do that. We, as a British company, could probably make more money if we aimed our films more specifically at the American market. We could do that, and that would be a choice we could make, but that wouldn't be honest. That would be a cynical thing to do. So I don't want to do that. I want to keep on making them the way we do, and I want to keep on giving chances to young people. That's very important. Because of course the future of our company and of our business depends on kids coming along with their ideas, and also the audience will never know this, but it's important for me that the crew have fun doing it, because I think if the crew have fun, I don't mean they're just clowning around, but I mean if they're really enjoying themselves, and then you get the best out of them, and I want the best out of them.